The Spin-Off Podcast Network.
Talofa Lover. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spin-Off. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spin-Off member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by Spark Lab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about Spark Lab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spin-Off with help from Callaghan Innovation. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
Today's guest is an author who's literally written the book on creating great teams, is a regular keynote speaker, and was an actual Olympian, who is now a leading expert in agile leadership and culture and has helped teams adopt holacracy. We hear a lot about those terms and how they can help businesses improve, but what do they really mean? How can they actually help business, and who is using them? Well, we're lucky today to be joined by Sandy Mamoli from agile consultancy Nomad 8, who has worked with organisations all around the world, including local innovators TradeMe and Snapper, to help people work better. Welcome. Thanks for coming on board.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, so tell me about that background as an athlete and Olympian in the sport of handball, which is not that well known here, but is huge in Europe.
Yes, it actually is. And I read somewhere it's the second biggest sports in Europe. And about 20 million people play it. It's been Olympics since the 1970s, and it's great fun, and it's such a shame that it's not played in New Zealand.
How do you play it? What's it? Give us the quick little rundown on handball, as you probably always have to do with Antipodeans.
It's a surprisingly difficult question because what I really want to do is be on TV and play the video for you. But fundamentally, it's 2 teams of 7 people, indoor sports, and 2 goals. And your aim is to put the goal into the other opponent's team's goal. It's a mix of basketball and rugby, and it's really fast and it's really physical, and you get to push people over, and that's great fun.
Right, so basketball, like you bounce it and pass it to people
Yes.
and go for a net. But rugby, like you actually, there's a bit of argy-bargy.
Exactly, yes.
Wow. And so how, and so in the Olympics, how are the Olympics?
The Olympics are awesome, and I think I was really lucky, and I also worked really hard to in order to go there. Finished 5th, which was so much better than ending up 4th, which I think must be a nightmare at the Olympics. But did it, and very happy about that.
And what lessons what have you taken out of being a high-performance sports person and being in kind of an obviously very winning team culture environment that takes you all the way to the Olympics? And how did that feed into your career as a consultant?
Funny you should ask that, because I've been in denial for about 25 years, and I have completely ignored that I have a professional sports past. And then about 2 years ago, I started thinking about exactly that. It's like, well, I am who I am because I did professional sports. And I think some of the main things I have learned are that I know how to choose my team. And the general guiding principle for me is that I choose the best team that will still accept me. I want to be the worst player on the best team that will still accept me. And the reason I want to do that is because the really good teams have the good coaches, you normalise high performance, and basically everyone else is really good and you're not. And that's how you learn. And I've taken that into everything I do, like both the agile and organisational consulting jobs I have now. I try to work with people who are better than me. I have an international network where I can learn from other people. And I think that's one of the key things that I have learned. What that has also given me is, if you're the worst person, it's not a fun place to be in. So I have learned how to deal with failure. And it's a funny thing because I think that in professional sports, failure is completely natural and we use it as our fuel. There's nothing personal in it. And it's actually a good thing. We care, but we use it as something that motivates us. Whereas in business, it's something that we try to avoid. At work, people try to hide it. So I never got that. And so I could learn without fear. And I think that has been really useful for me.
Isn't that interesting? Because in sports, you really do understand that some days you just don't win. Even the good people have a bad day, or the calls can go against you, or things. And it's really normalised that even vaunted champions will have off days. But yeah, that's so true that in business, like no one's wanting to kind of go, I lost today.
Yes. And you learn it's not a disaster. I mean, it feels horrible, and you do want to dig yourself a tunnel to get out of the court without being seen because it's embarrassing and it really hurts. But you know that life goes on, and all you need to do is show up the next day again and keep going.
Let's come back to kind of like teams and leadership culture, because there's, especially in sports obsessed New Zealand, it's a really wonderful kind of theme in business. Let's go back and kind of talk to how you became a consultant and got interested in agile, and maybe we'll get into kind of like what agile means.
The big question, yes. I actually fell into a coaching and consulting role because I used to work in Europe in Stockholm, Copenhagen, and Amsterdam with Sony Ericsson with digital marketing in the early 2000s. And around 2002 or 3, we started working in an agile way. And then in 2006, I moved to New Zealand. And I realised I had thought it was completely normal to work agile. It was what I had basically grown up with professionally. It was something I thought everyone was doing. What I didn't realise at the time was that Northern Europe was actually way ahead of everyone else, and what I thought was normal was actually not. So moving here, I thought, wow, I have seen another way of doing things, and I don't want to go back to doing things the old way, and started creating pockets for myself. And those pockets were great, and they were on a team level. And then I started creating pockets that were a bit bigger, that were like several teams. And I realised the organisation around us and the obstacles we ran into. And then my pockets became bigger and bigger until, one, people started paying me for that. And secondly, my pockets became the size of Trade Me or Snapper, for example.
So what does an agile... so what are the agile processes, and what would an agile team look like compared to a non-agile team? And maybe if we look at like just a team inside a company like a Trade Me.
So the really important thing that you're saying is the word team, that it is really team-based. And what is important in an agile team is that this team is cross-functional and multi-skilled. And the basic idea is you give a group of people a purpose that's really compelling, very much like a sports team. And then you create an environment where they can self-organise and achieve that purpose or that goal together. And the process is important, but it's different for each team. There's some starter kits such as Scrum and practices people can use. But the really important part is having a cross-functional team with a purpose that's self-organising and figures out how to reach that goal. And while doing that, realising or accepting that we can't know everything up front. Things change, there's complexity, so there's a certain amount of experimentation where we try something, get feedback, and adapt to that feedback. And that's basically it in a nutshell.
And in some businesses where it's very well adopted now, tech companies, for example, where there are specific features to build or a specific problem to solve. There's high adoption. Is it something that applies across every industry? Like, do kind of, I don't know, a team of accountants working on an audit, are they able to use Agile in their processes, or is it better suited to certain industries?
There is a sweet spot because it comes out of technology, so that is relatively easy, or let's say we know how to do it. What has happened in the last 5 years, though, is that people have realized just because something has been invented in one area doesn't mean that it can't be applicable in other areas. So what I see more and more is actually other kind of businesses using Agile, and also within technology business, other functions using Agile, such as marketing or sales. And we have now taken that to something that meant to be a team level agility, to take it on a level of business agility. Like entire businesses need to adapt to changing worlds and complexity.
So let's dig into a little more at the team level side of things, because you've written this book, Creating Great Teams, and that's a really interesting subject as well, as when businesses grow. In the early days, it's easy with a small team of people to communicate everything and make it work. And then once you get projects, there's kind of ideal sizes of teams, but then you might have lots of people that want to do lots of different things and you have to tell people what to do. But your book is really interesting because it talks about the idea of self-selection, of people being able to choose the projects that they work on. So what is a kind of like ideal team size, and how does it go about if people can choose whatever they want to do in a business?
Ideal team size, we say, is 7 plus minus 2 people. And the reason the teams are relatively small is so that you can still talk to each other without having cliques or without having to write too much documentation. So we're basically trying to emulate that startup world, the olden days when it was just us in a little garage and we could all talk to each other. And so that's the team size. And we have, in the past, kind of figured out how those teams can work together. That's a known, really, really hard, but it's a known problem. And at some point, we realized that nobody has thought about the problem, how to actually get into those teams. And it's always been management selection, where someone goes, you, and you should be in that team, you, and you in that other team. And we were, at the time, my friend David Mole and I were at TradeMe and had this problem that we had around 300 people we needed to get into teams. And that's when we realized that why are we actually telling other people which team to work with? Because people do their best work if they can choose what they work on and who they work with. So we came up with this method to make it safe for people to choose which team they wanted to work in. And it has worked really well at TradeMe, and that's 5 years ago. And since then, we have shared how to do it, and lots of companies from all over the world have tried it too.
That's an interesting thought, that people choose what they work on. I guess the common questions would be, how do you make sure that, you don't end up with 6 engineers and no, testers or no project managers, and how do you make sure that people don't just pick to work on the fun stuff and then no one's doing the plumbing,
It's a great question, and I think pretty much everyone has those questions. We're those questions we're asking ourselves too, like, oh my God. And the magic word is constraints. This is not just about what you want to do. This is about taking a big problem or puzzle, and instead of having managers solving it, we have the people who are affected solve it. And constraints we usually have is you need to be able to deliver to your purpose. So six testers or 6 business analysts probably won't if it's a software development team. So there's a team size constraint between 5 and 9 people. There's a constraint of you need to deliver to purpose, and also do what's best for your company. So if there is one team that's amazing, but you can't fill the other teams, that's not what's best for your company. So we ask you to solve the entire problem and not just do what you feel like doing.
Quite interesting that you pass across, kind of share amongst all the people what's been traditionally management's problem, which is make people, do the best thing for the company, and not think first of kind of the individual people.
Yes, and I think really good companies manage to do that well, and they have a purpose, and people are engaged in a way that they want to help the company achieve that purpose. And I find it fascinating to have people who don't just go to work and think of themselves, but know about the bigger picture and why they're doing something. And it's a balance. There's something in it for the company, but also something for the individual, because we all want to go to work and feel fulfilled and feel we're doing something meaningful, I think.
And so has that, with a few years of experience at Trade Me and doing it in companies, does it make people feel more empowered and connected to the mission and satisfied?
It does.
Yeah,
definitely. The good thing about writing a book is that now people know about me and David, so they let us know. We get emails from all over the world, how it went, how people feel about it, and what's interesting is how different groups react differently. Like you have people who are my age, like really old. And,
it's not true. You can't see listeners here, but it's not true at all, yes.
But my generation and people over 30 in general, they are used to management selection, so they think this is amazing. They're really grateful in general. I think this is a privilege. Whereas you have graduates coming out of uni and it's their first job and they think this is completely normal. And in a way, this is also what I want, that this is the normal way of letting people to choose how to work.
And so this kind of concept of Agile has been extremely influential in the world, as you're saying, going right up to kind of top-level decision-making, the idea of breaking a problem into lots of little bits and getting teams to chew it off. And a huge part of the success of the teams that I've seen working well in Agile seems to be constant and high-quality communication. Daily meetings, as you go, very clearly at the beginning setting out what success looks like and what the is and isn't acceptable out of the project, and then having high quality retrospectives at the end of each time period that you choose to go back and look at everything in a no fault way as to whether it worked or not. And those concepts, which work at the team of 7 level, also work at a organisation of 500 level.
Yes, and the concepts work, and it's really hard to communicate between the 100 of us. So we need to have different ways of communicating. And I said earlier on, we're trying to emulate the old startup days. So making those groups smaller, and instead of having individuals just communicating or being responsible for communicating across everything, we now have bigger units. So it's less complexity if we have 40 teams instead of 500 people trying to figure something out. And that's actually something where things like holacracy come in, because that is the connection or the glue between teams and around how information can flow between teams. So it is the same principles around, communication and a clear and strong purpose. But when you take it into lots and lots and lots of people, then communication gets harder, and the actual methods or ways of doing them might change, whereas the principles remain the same.
Okay, so let's go right back to kind of like, how would you define holacracy to someone that's heard it or seen it on like a LinkedIn post but may not be able to explain it?
Yeah. First of all, apologies about the silly language, and I hate the language around holacracy. It's really stilted and annoying. But fundamentally, it's all work is done in teams, and those teams are called circles. And the circles are connected to each other, and very often in a hierarchy. And the hierarchy looks something like there is a big circle, which is the entire organization, and within that circle there are sub-circles. And the top circle, parent circle, gives the child circle its purpose, and that can trigger all the way down and across. So every single circle within an organisation supports the parent circle's purpose, goes all the way up to the organisation's purpose. So in the end, what you get is a hierarchy of purpose and not people, which I think is a really important distinction. And the circles are connected in a way that there is downstream information flow, but also a way of linking back up. So there's a representative of each child circle that is a member of the parent circle, who has full voting rights and is a full member of that team. it's a bit like a union representative who can make sure nothing damaging is done to the child circle, anything that slows them down or moves them away from their purpose. And fundamentally, that's it. You take things onto an organisational level, and you don't look that, or holacracy has nothing to say around how things work within the team. That's where Agile is really useful. And in some contexts, probably even waterfalls or different ways of working.
Right. So the waterfalls you mentioned there are when people at the top just tell people below them what to do, the kind of traditional leadership there. That sounds, I guess, to people that aren't used to working in a way like a holacracy, it sounds like a lot of time would be spent with people in different circles trying to agree things. But if it's all tied to a common purpose, does that mean that there's kind of an external set of decision-making attributes, so you can choose whether the decision's right or not for the company or the purpose, and that makes it quicker?
Yeah, that makes it quicker because you have those constraints. You have a domain within which you're free to make decisions. But there's also something that's really important around decision making, because you're right, it could take ages if everything has to be decided by consensus. Everyone has to agree, and holacracy has introduced decision making by consent, which basically means instead of everyone having to agree, it's one person making a proposal. So I propose we do this. And unless someone else in that circle objects, we move ahead. And objecting, you can't just object going, oh, I don't like this. It needs to be a valid objection, meaning something that is that moves us away, the circle away from achieving its purpose, or it's not safe to try. But if it's safe to try and moves us probably in the right direction, we err on the side of action. And we also know that if it doesn't work, we can still change it the next time because it's safe to try.
And although this sounds like quite a confusing kind of diagrammatic model, it's happening, isn't it? It's being used in companies small and large, and you helped roll out this kind of process at Snapper, for people who aren't in Wellington, a very large, well-run tech company that provides kind of cards that get you on and off the bus and stuff like that work in the shops and the like. So great company. How did it go rolling it out across a company like that? And, are some people maybe sitting more on the skeptical, I don't want to be doing everything by consensus thing, and some people are more like, oh, wow, I'm so glad that I get to take part in decisions?
In the beginning, there were lots of people who were skeptical, including leadership, including me, because it sounds really convoluted and complicated, and the language is kind of annoying. But we tried it out with an open mind, and there was a problem we wanted to solve, and that was that Snapper had grown over the years. They have been agile since 2010, and then 8 years later, there was many teams, but things were starting to fall through the cracks. It was the communication between teams, and also the question, like, could we grow by 20 people without either descending into chaos or turning into a bureaucracy? And we thought that holacracy could be a good alternative to look into. And we just decided to try it with a completely open mind. Some people, highly skeptical. Some people did not like the language or how complicated it was. But we made an agreement to defer judgment and run a real experiment. After about 3, 4, 5 months, we knew it was the right thing for us. And it was a pretty big learning curve, and it wasn't always fun. But talking to people, they say it was absolutely worth it. And personally, looking back, I think that was actually easier than adding Agile to the company. And I think the reason for that is that if a team turns Agile, it's really pervasive. It changes how you work on a daily basis. Everything changes for you. Your job really changes.
Oh, yeah, you've got a heartbeat meeting every morning where you have to say what you accomplished yesterday, and you've got to have something to show every day. It's a very it's a very open working way.
Yes, you're much closer to your peers, and it's really open, and it changes what you do on a daily basis. Holacracy doesn't. That is a thing that's on top of Agile, so it's not every day, every minute of your life. And I think that's probably why it was easier.
And I wonder, does it help to flush out people who aren't aligned to a company's purpose? Because if purpose is the kind of defining link between everything, and every team and every person has to be to the purpose, the kind of people who go, I'm just coming to work to eat my lunch, I don't care about purpose, they're probably not going to have a huge ability to deal with it. But it might be a way for them to get on board or get off board.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I haven't seen it because Snapper are, I think, roughly 60 people, and they have a really good culture, and people are really passionate about public transport. So I haven't seen anyone react like that, but I think that is exactly what could happen, that you flush out people who don't care that much about the purpose. And it's actually good because there is enough work to go around at the moment, especially in our fields, that people can find other companies where they do believe in the purpose.
And that idea of purpose where it's in business, sometimes, people who are skeptical about that might go, oh, well, I don't care, just, make the widgets or whatever. But in other areas, like sports, it's really pervasive, isn't it? Having a team culture aligned to a purpose and to a set of values, and that being really vital for, say, the All Blacks or the Crusaders or great teams that everyone knows in New Zealand. Another thing that's interesting about that is the link between kind of team culture and company culture around, the winners being on the field. Tell me about kind of the links between that kind of sports culture and company culture.
There's one big difference, and that is sports is a zero-sum game. I either win or lose, whereas in a company we can all win, and that's actually a really, really good thing. What I found was a really good link between those two was that if you're a professional athlete, you learn how to work with diversity, how to work with people you don't necessarily understand, who you don't necessarily like, because it really is people are chosen by merit. And even if I don't like you, if you're the best left wing in the world, I want to play with you. And I think this is also something that is really important for teams, for work teams. And I think we could learn a lot there. And it's only possible in professional sports, I believe, because the purpose is so strong that we can ignore all those differences and go, right, but we want to achieve this. So let's focus on values and how we interact and make this really explicit. Basically, don't be a dick and communicate in a certain way. And those things are something that I think we need to learn in our professional teams and also in our organisations. And that's something where I think there is a strong link, but sports is actually ahead and we could learn from real teams.
And some great leading companies in the kind of culture space, like Netflix, have the idea of it being like a team. And I think for a lot of small companies where it's been almost like a family, the change to being a team is different, because with a family you can't kick your uncle out if he's not performing, but with a sports team you can, and it's about what's best for the team, that you continue to earn your place and contribute, as opposed to a family where you're kind of stuck with them.
Yes, and I think I'm actually glad that work life is a bit less brutal than sports, because in sports you really kick people out, and if you don't make the team, well, you're out and choose a different career.
But there might be room in kind of back office or in helping the next generation or being, doing the sausage sizzle. There's roles if you're not on the field.
That's true, and I totally support that. They're a substitute. I just feel a bit bad about people if they really are on the street and struggling to make ends meet. But overall, yes, I think if you really are not good enough, then there is no place for you. But we can help you become good enough if you do have the will to learn, if you have a growth mindset, and if you learn how to play with the other kids and how to deal with failure, which is necessary in order to learn and succeed.
And as a consultant working with Nomad 8 and as an author and a speaker, you're very much your own brand and entrepreneur as well. What advice do you give to entrepreneurs when they're starting out?
I think all My advice is basically you don't need to have the big plan. I think all you need to have is 1 or 2 clients, and that can set you off. Have work for the next 3 months, and then everything else is going to be fine, I believe. So don't worry too much about it. Don't fear. And if you've got a starting point, just go for it.
And do you have any words you live by? Are there any kind of things you come back to when things get tough, or words you like to kind of come back to?
Well, based on what I just said, like kind of inspiring myself, I think I'm guided by what would you do if you had no fear, and trying to live my life basically not guided by fear.
And how do you define success?
For myself, it's if I have things to do that are interesting, that inspire me, that I look forward to doing, and are challenging me and where I learn, then I'm happy. The basics need to be covered. Like, I don't want to worry about where I get money for food from. But once that's covered, it's about challenging, it's about learning and trying new things, having the opportunity to try new things that nobody else has tried before.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sandy Mamoli, for coming and sharing your story today. You can check out Sandy's book, Creating Great Teams, and find her at Nomad 8 as an agile and leadership and culture consultant. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much to Tina and Ellis for producing, and thank you very much for listening. If you have enjoyed today's chat, have a look through the back catalogue. There's more than 100 interviews with great business people in New Zealand.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound, and brought to you by The Spin-Off and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.